Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. The conversation over Roe v. Wade continues as America prepares for a world in which states once again decide how to handle abortion. Democrats are seeking other ways to challenge the upcoming ruling, but is there a chance of keeping Roe v. Wade alive? I have with me Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, Jim Fight, to discuss. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. So right out the gate, I mean, you've been writing a series on libertynation.com about what might happen if and when Roe v. Wade is overturned. You kind of go through each state, and you don't need to go over each state here, but if you can give us kind of an overview of what's likely to happen.
Sure. Yeah. That was an endeavor. Let me just say that. There were a lot of laws to dig through. So there are, you've probably seen it's commonly reported right now, there are like 13 states that already have trigger laws in place, another 13 that are supposed to be working on them, for a total of 26 states that both sides of the debate are kind of pointing to and saying, hey, look, for those who want Roe overturned specifically, as was mentioned in the Alito draft. In fact, Alito mentioned this in the draft, was that there were 26 states hoping that this gets overturned. And then, of course, on the other side of the argument, you've got them saying, look, there are 26 states where abortion is going to be illegal, which isn't exactly true. But it's there's actually 27 states, really, because you kind of have to count North Carolina, because they have a pre-Roe ban that's actually pretty stringent. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll actually enforce it. But so basically, it's gonna vary from state to state, as it kind of does now. The only real difference is it's going to vary a lot more. In the states that want to restrict or even just completely outlaw abortion, you're going to see that. Some of that is with the laws that are still on the books but unenforceable because of Roe. They will, of course, become enforceable. Some of that is, laws that have been passed or are being worked on right now that are the so-called trigger laws. So basically, how that works is it's the law, but nobody's, it's not in effect unless Roe's gone. That way, there's no legal challenge for it, right? Because it's not an actual law that can go into effect. Right. And then once Roe's gone, well, there goes your legal challenge. And that's going to be the case over slightly more than half the country. But nowhere in the country will it be fully outlawed without exception at all.
Oh, really? So you don't think that there will be any state that just outlaws it completely, if no ifs, ands, or buts?
No. Well, I mean, there are. I don't remember off the top of my head right now if it was 2 or 3, but there are a few that will have what I call the quote unquote total ban that that defines the pregnancy as beginning at the point of, some of them say the point of fertilization, some of them say the point of implantation. But anyways, basically, it's not about the fetal heartbeat. It's not about 20 weeks. It's about, once you're pregnant, and that's it. But even in those states, there are exceptions for medical emergencies. Some states will keep the rape and incest exceptions. Some states will keep the fatal fetal anomaly exceptions. All 27 states that I examined will have some form of save the mother's life or her health. And also something to point out real quick, because a lot of times that a lot of what comes up is like, oh, what about an ectopic pregnancy? Every law that I examined, well, not the specific laws, but in every state that I examined the relevant law in, abortion is defined. It has to be defined as a legal term before you can regulate it. Okay. And in the definition in every state, it excludes ectopic pregnancies or removing a dead fetus. So if there's a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy, that's not even legally considered an abortion. So it's completely outside of the conversation, or should be rather.
Okay, so all the fear mongering over mothers or doctors being arrested if a mother has a miscarriage sounds a little bit unfounded. Right. Who would have thought that would have been just mindless hysteria? But
oh yeah, right.
Yeah, but okay. So here's the thing. I mean,
it serves the narrative.
Yeah, obviously, and the pro-abortion crowd is freaking out about this. And Democrats in the Senate, they recently tried and failed to codify Roe v. Wade into law, and the bill was criticized for being too extreme. Now, what was in this bill that was so radical?
I'm actually going to quote Senator Susan Collins here, because I think she worded it the best way. Not that I agree with her or disagree with her necessarily, but just as far as the way she presented the difference between the Women's Health Protection Act and what a law that would basically put Roe into legislation would be. And she said, and I quote, "Unlike some far left activists, Senator Murkowski and I want the law today to be the law tomorrow." And that's what you have to look at. You have to look at what's legal right now. What does Roe actually do? And remember that Roe isn't a law. Roe is a decision on the constitutionality of a law. It isn't a law in itself. So what they want to do is they want to take what the practical effects of Roe and make it into a law. That's what Senator Collins and Murkowski want to do. What this does is what it would do if it were passed, this Women's Health Protection Act, is considerably more. For example, there would be no Hyde Amendment, which, of course, prevents the use of tax funds to fund abortions, which is an issue because then you're violating the freedom of choice for anyone who believes that abortion is murder by using their tax dollars to fund it. It also removes the conscious protections for healthcare providers who, either for religious reasons or even just their non-religious ethical reasons, don't believe in abortion and therefore don't want to perform abortions. So, and without that, you're basically saying, look, if you don't want to perform, like, okay, here's the thing. Abortions are healthcare. If you don't want to perform abortions, don't become a doctor. And that's, all of the, or most at least, of the laws thus far and under Roe, that conscious protection is protected. You have the right to say, hey, look, I don't believe in this, I'm not going to do it, without saying, well, I guess I can't be a doctor anymore. And then also it would do away with things like the mandatory ultrasounds. Right. It would do away with counseling. It would do away with the requirement to inform and get consent from the parents in the case of a minor getting an abortion. It would do away with all of the religious protections, which, interestingly enough, the religious protections in place right now that kind of guarantee folks not having to, the doctors not having to perform this if they don't want to, actually comes from a law that was written by the current Senate Majority Leader, Senator Charles Schumer, back when he was in the House in '93, and it passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. And this Women's Health Protection Act is actually the first piece of federal legislation that explicitly undoes that.
Wow. So here's the thing, though. I mean, obviously, what was in that bill was like a pro-abortionist dream. Oh, yeah. But it's not really in line with what the public wants. So if they were so serious about safeguarding specifically Roe v. Wade, why would they push such an extreme bill?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, or I should say a couple of potential reasons. On the one hand, maybe that's what they really want. And I mean, ultimately it is what they really want, but maybe that's the primary motivation, is to actually get this done. And saying, codify Roe v. Wade is basically like talking about military style assault weapons or Russian collusion, right? Like it's a narrative keyword. It's pure propaganda. But so it very well could be that they are really trying to slide under the radar, slide these more extreme abortion protections in place. It could also be an intentional poison pill where they want to, and I'm kind of leaning towards this because Senator Schumer has on multiple occasions said, I want to get everyone on the record. And he's used that language. Want to get everyone on the record where they stand. We're going to force a vote, and there won't be any hiding. There'll be no middle ground. You're either for it or against it, and the people will see. And so I'm kind of leaning towards it might even be just a dog and pony show to drum up donations and midterm support. It's an election campaign strategy is what it seems like to me, is they know it isn't going to pass. They don't care that it isn't going to pass, but they want to be able to point to it later and go, see what those just monsters in the Republican Party did.
Yeah, those misogynists, definitely. Yeah. That makes sense. I do remember Chuck Schumer saying that. So last question. So if it is overturned, if they issue that ruling before the end of June, what are the Democrats going to do? How are they going to get around it? Or are they going to give up? Or are they going to mount another legal challenge? What do you see happening?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't see them giving up at all. I imagine there will be continued legal challenges. A lot of the teeth is taken out of that, but there's no reason. Look, they have nigh unlimited time and money, so why not? You know, it's definitely going to become a campaign issue. Whether that will be successful or not, it will still be something they're going to campaign on. And of course, there are some states that have abortion bans or restrictions of some sort, and there are states that have fairly Republican control of the legislature that have Democrat governors and Democrat attorneys general who will refuse to enforce these laws. And in those places, it'll kind of be a toss-up. Like at the state level, it won't be enforced. Maybe this county will enforce it. Maybe this county won't. There'll be legal challenges about that. The issue certainly isn't going away.
Okay. Yeah. It does make sense that would go to the state and local levels to fight about. That'll be something that we'll take a look at maybe around when the Supreme Court issues its ruling. But until then, thanks for joining the program, and we'll do this again. Thanks
for having me, Jeff.
And remember, the show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Daily tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.